Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Conversations on Retail. My name is Matt Pfeiffer. I'm the founder and CEO of Supplier Community, and I don't know why I do this, but I always do. It's a weather update. It's a beautiful and sunny day in Northwest Arkansas after a couple of weeks of cold and snow. We're really glad to see spring close by. For anyone who doesn't know, Conversations on Retail is really my opportunity to spend time visiting with, interacting with, getting to know better some of the people from retail, from CPG, and from the supporting industries that have really been fascinating to me. Folks that I've had some interaction with, either directly or by way of the organizations that they work with, for or have founded. But I really don't know these folks. And so today I'm with Molly McFarland, who is one of the co-founders of a company called AdAdapted, and she's going to talk about her business and what they do. But I always kind of like to start with background, and I always go all the way back to the beginning to talk about childhood. And I know that you grew up in Maine, but I don't really know much more about you. I'm just kind of curious, what were some of your earliest influences in life, going back to your childhood, the things that you experienced or learned that really brought about your interests and passions and curiosities and natural abilities? What was your childhood like?
Yeah. So I actually, if you're going way, way back, I was born in Massachusetts, and I lived there for the first 10 years of my life, and really in the suburbs. Braintree, Massachusetts is a suburb of Boston. And my mom had grown up there. My dad had grown up there. But they got a divorce, and my mom ended up meeting somebody from Maine when I was about 10 and moved me up there. So it went from living a pretty suburban childhood to moving to a town that had less than 1,000 full-time residents. Doesn't even have a street light today. I don't think it has a street light. And it just sort of turned my world upside down. One thing that was really interesting about a really small town like that is everybody is entrepreneurial in some way, or everybody's super independent. There is no infrastructure. There is no feeling like you can just call somebody and somebody's going to fix something for you. You have to be super self-reliant. You have to be able to take care of yourself and your family. And if you don't know how to do it, you better figure it out. That's where I think I got inspired to sort of be okay with figuring things out and doing something that was a little bit unplanned or against the grain. I didn't grow up with a tech background. My mom was a nurse. My stepfather was a carpenter. So I didn't have a startup influence, but I did have that spirit of, try it and go for it.
And being around people that served others and fixed things, that had to have kind of, fueled some of that as well. So being in a small community without access to a phone call to get things taken care of, you learned to be more self-reliant, like you said.
Yep.
So in terms of your interests and passions as a young girl, what were some of the things you did in your spare time? For some people, it's athletics. For some people, it's part-time work. Some people, it's a faith journey. But what were some of the things in your childhood that really would help you get to know you and influence the rest of your life?
I think it was a little bit of a couple of those things. So I was a student athlete. I was a state champion tennis player. But as my husband always likes to say, when I say I was a state champion, he says, in Maine, as if it indicates just how many people I was competing with. Me and all of my friends had jobs when we were 14. So in the summer, there was an influx of tourists that would come in. So I remember even freshman year of high school during the summers, would be babysitting or would be waitressing and would be cleaning cabins for people. That was just sort of part of the drill. And then I was really into reading. I was an English major. I ended up going to school, to the chagrin of my parents, to get my English major degree from Tulane University, which kind of drove them crazy, but a lot of reading, a lot of writing too.
Well, I was going to ask you, what drove your decision to move to New Orleans and go to Tulane?
You got to picture this. So I'm 17, 18 years old. I'm in Maine. I'm in a town that has less than 1,000 people. It is around November, December, after you send in all your applications, and it is dark by maybe 4 o'clock, and there's about 3 feet of snow outside. And I'm starting getting all this mail from the other schools I applied to. So most were in New York and Boston. And then I'm getting these gorgeous colorful packets from
Right.
Tulane saying, this is what we're doing in New Orleans this weekend. This is, here's a bunch of kids studying on a quad. Here's a patio party that they're having. Oh, and Mardi Gras is coming up. And you're looking outside your own window and you're looking at these pamphlets and you're like, I got to get out of here. That's where I'm going. So it wasn't even the party. Everybody's saying, oh, the New Orleans has a vibe to it for sure. But the rich history, the city atmosphere without it being as big as like a New York or a Boston. And then just the warm weather and just, sort of the lifestyle.
Did you have any friends or family in New Orleans that would welcome you and help you kind of learn the area? Or were you all on your own?
I was on my own to the point where, because of my parents' work schedules and at the time money was tight, I jumped on a plane with just a couple of bags and we shipped some boxes down there. And I just got there and I got into a cab and went to school. So
what were your, and maybe you had them, maybe you didn't. I'm going to assume that you did. What were your occupational goals when you started school, and did they change as you progressed into your major?
Yeah. So first I thought I was going to be a lawyer, and then I shadowed a couple lawyers and talked to a couple judges and decided that wasn't for me. So it's sort of, I had a couple of those hard conversations, which I really appreciate looking back, talking to those people and having them be like, this is what we do day to day. This is what the job really is. And I remember being like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. This isn't Atticus Finch stuff that I see on TV. This is different. I thought I was also going to write, maybe be a journalist, but I ended up finding my way into sales and marketing instead. So marketing sort of was the next place to go in terms of writing content, in terms of communicating ideas in that way. But it started, lawyer, then teacher. That didn't go very far. That was a couple weeks, and then I eventually got to marketing.
Yeah. So I did a little bit of research and learned that you had been a bartender in college, and I've always thought bartending would be the perfect job for someone, any young person, but at college age, obviously. Because you'd be able to learn a lot of skills, simultaneously. So what did you take away from that experience?
Besides making a really great drink, really strong old fashioned. No, you got to be able to talk to everybody. It's crazy. Bartending in New Orleans, on any given night, you have people that come in that are really shy. Some of them are really awkward. Some of them are super affable and tell fantastic stories. You have to be able to navigate a conversation and make everybody feel listened to while still doing your job and doing the things that are important to you. Prioritization, it's hard. In fact, when we hire people today, I love to see that they have some sort of serving or bartending or some sort of experience where they have to, the restaurant industry experience, because it's still to date probably the hardest job I ever had. I remember, and anybody that's been a server will remember this, I remember being up to my eyeballs in orders. Like there's no way out. There's no way you can get to everybody in time. And you're doing it for 6 to 8 hours straight on your feet and juggling all these different competing priorities all the time. And you still have to make it work, and you still have to be able to walk away at the end of the night and not carry it with you and not be super stressed out. Did you ever bartender or serve?
No, I served. I bussed tables. I worked retail. I did a lot of service-oriented work, and in terms, it's not about me. This conversation is about me, but just work ethic and serving others, and just understanding that in those sorts of environments, there's no real hierarchy. If you find the clogged up toilet, you deal with it. Right? If the trash is overflowing, you deal with it. And it really was a humbling experience for me.
Everybody has to, you don't get to go home until the place is clean. So either you're going to wait around for somebody else to do it, or you're going to do it yourself and get out of there.
Right. Well, and in those environments, the ability to work and play well with others is critically important too, right? When there is no real hierarchy, everyone is kind of on their own, or you're going to do it together as a team. So
absolutely.
So after graduating from Tulane, you moved to Michigan and went to work for an architectural firm. And I'd love to hear kind of about those 3.5 years in summary, and what you took away from those years that have most contributed to your longer term success.
Yeah, that was a really fun job, because that was the that was my breakthrough. I really do believe that there's kids that just have their head on straight right away, and they know exactly what they're doing out of college. They get the internship. As soon as they graduate, they get the offer, they move into the job, at least the field that they're going to be working in, and that's just the way life goes. Then there's a lot of people, myself included, that get out of college, and we were hard workers. I got good grades, but what's next, right? What is that next step? I didn't have any real work experience besides service industry, nannying, those types of things, but I knew that's not what I wanted to do forever. So when I moved up here, I ended up taking an admin job, just basically working the front desk at this architectural firm. But it was that first step, and they allowed a lot of growth within that company. So I went from admin to a mix between admin and marketing, then to full-time marketing, then a mix between marketing and business development, then started even, kind of rising in the ranks of business development there and taking on my own accounts. So in just a few years, I feel like I got my shot, was able to prove myself, and work my way up. So one, that's something that we try to bring into our company today. Who are those kids that show a lot of talent that just need that first opportunity, that big shot? The other big takeaway that I had from there was that nothing is guaranteed. So this was a firm that had been around for a long time, still around, still doing well. Everybody that I interacted with through that job were a part of very established companies. So engineers, developers, other architectural firms as competitors, but these were all people that you mixed and networked with. And a lot of the companies had been around for 20, 50, 80 years. 2008 hit, the recession of 2008, and it was just a bloodbath. I mean, companies were shutting down, companies were laying off their staff in droves. At our own company, we would have layoffs every couple of weeks where 10 people at a time were just getting let go. And so I remember seeing that. There was a lot of anxiety. I'm sure a lot of us have been through that in recessions at different places. But it just really hit home, this idea of just because it's a company that's big and that's been around forever, and an industry that's been around forever, it doesn't mean that you can just sit back, relax, and this can be your life. Yeah. And it was that time, I don't think if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have gotten into startups. But at that time, I met a local startup founder, successful founder in Ann Arbor. And we were talking, and he ended up recruiting me over to that company. We can talk about that too. Sure. But the reason I was even open to it was because I was like, startups, they're not that risky, right? This can't be any more risky than sticking around here and watching what's going to happen next in the building world. So, but it was still a good experience. It's just, you just sort of realize even great places, you have to be on your toes.
Yeah. So in 2010, opportunity sought you, and you left Hobbs & Black to join the company that would become Amplifinity. Yep. And you went from planning, coordinating, and assisting to designing, developing, and implementing strategy. So I'm curious, what were some of the hurdles you faced as you made that transition? Because it's a pretty hefty transition, not just culturally from an established business into a startup, but also a complete, redefinition of roles and responsibilities.
Yeah. Startups are really fun because you can take on bigger things than you can at big companies. So people talk a lot in the startup world about like imposter syndrome, or this feeling that you don't, like, that the other people in the room know more than you do. And I think when you're in a big company, it's really easy to just assume that, right? I'm inexperienced. I haven't been here for very long. And when you get to startup, I remember the founder was Dick Beaton. He was just like, you're going to do this now. You're just going to write these decks. You're going to come up with the messaging. You're going to teach the sales team how to do it. You've done it. You've had experience doing it. You're the most experienced marketing person we have. So dive right in. And it was just like, your heart starts beating. It's a lot of anxiety, but it's just sort of that push out of the nest that I think a lot of people need. And I ended up doing pretty well at it. I really enjoyed it, but it would have taken me years to get to that point at the other company because there were always more people ahead of you. So it was fun. It was scary, but it was fun. And I took it very seriously.
Yeah.
Does that answer that question?
No, it does. Absolutely. Okay. But were there skills that because I know every time in my career, both, working for Walmart in a corporate, structured environment, and then also kind of the entrepreneurial journey of the last 16 years, I love what you said about imposter syndrome, by the way. I could have a long conversation with you about that. It's crazy how real that is, no
Yeah.
matter how far you get. But I'm curious if there were skills that you developed along the way that you didn't realize that you had to make that big leap.
I think one of the things that I'm conscious of, and I don't know if I'm good at it, but I think a lot about it, is being able to determine what I know and what I already know how to do, and then asking questions around things that I don't know. So it was very clear to me when I got to this new place that I didn't know anything about referral marketing. I didn't know anything about software marketing, to be totally honest. I did know how to support a sales team. I did know how to put together a deck because I had spent the last 3 years building presentations. And so what I did when I got to Refer at the time, and it turned into Amplifinity, was sort of walked into the room and was confident about the stuff I knew and would have input there, and then asked a ton of questions. I found the people that were nice and they seemed smart, and I would ask them to talk to me. I became friends with them, and I would just ask them to teach me the stuff that I didn't know and fill in all the gaps. I think it's really important that people don't feel too shy or ashamed or embarrassed about things that they don't know, because sometimes it is so easy. You can cut out a week worth of questioning and work by just sitting down with somebody saying, hey, can you just help me get there? And can you help me shortcut this?
Yeah.
So that's how I learned about software. That's how I was able to study what our competitors were doing. That's how I got to sit in on conversation, understand what our clients wanted. That's how I talked to a sales team and understood what the challenges were. And all of those things brought me to what I needed to know to be successful in that role.
Yeah, that's great. So I do want to get quickly to your own entrepreneurial journey, because I think that's such an interesting part of your story. But before we do that, I want to talk about coaches, mentors, and partners, because all of us have had people in our lives, in every aspect of our lives, that pick us up, cheer us on, even hold us accountable. And I'm just curious, in this kind of first chapter, if you will, of your professional journey, who were some of those people? Family, friends, peers, et cetera.
Yeah. I have great friends and family. They have always, nobody called me crazy when I left my job with my friend Mike to start AdAdapted, which, looking back, is kind of crazy to me because it was crazy at the time. It all turned out well, but I imagine some of those early conversations where we could barely articulate what it was we were doing or trying to do. But hey, I'm leaving my job and I don't have a paycheck and I want to dive in. And so the fact that my parents, my best friends from college and high school, my own husband, everybody sort of said, great, we're behind you 100%, is makes me super proud to have those people in my life. Professionally, there were a few too. Ellen, who was my boss at Haas & Black, she taught me everything I needed to know about sales. She was really good at helping me understand how to navigate a pretty sexist environment and how to feel confidence when I didn't feel confident, and how to fake confidence when I couldn't get there. And then Dick Beaton, the founder of that company that I moved to, he was just one of the best entrepreneurs I've ever met. He just had that spirit of don't let anything get in your way. And if you can think it, you can build it. So those were two people that had a lot of influence on where I am today.
Great. So let's talk about AdAdapted, and we'll dig into the backstory, but what is AdAdapted today?
Yeah, AdAdapted is a mobile advertising platform. We specialize in getting products added to mobile lists or carts. We work with some of the top CPGs in the country, and we have some pretty amazing publisher partners that build mobile applications that people are using to shop. One of the things that puts us on the map too is we have a proprietary data set. We're able to see what people are adding to their grocery list, what they're going to buy before they actually go into a store to make that purchase, or what they're adding to a cart before they actually transact. And it's become pretty powerful and pretty valuable for us, especially as CPGs are trying to understand the shopper journey in a more complete way. But yeah, that's where we are today.
So you've alluded to Mike Peterson a couple times already, but talk about the relationship you developed with him, and how the two of you made the decision ultimately to start this business together.
Yeah. So I met Mike at Amplifinity. So he was one of the original, I think 3 or 4 people that started URefer that turned into Amplifinity. And he was an amazing engineer and basically built this tech stack that was supporting millions and millions of dollars of marketing spend for the likes of, you know, DirecTV and ADP and other big companies that had large scale referral programs. So we ended up finding ourselves doing a lot of calls together where we would have to talk to clients, where he would be explaining sort of the technical aspect of Amplifinity, and I would be doing sort of the marketing and sales, or maybe we would also have another salesperson on the call with us too. So we got to know each other really well. We became friends. And then he had this idea for mobile advertising, and it came out of Amplifinity. It came out of this conversation where every call we got on, remember it's 2012, and marketers are just starting to see that mobile is this huge tsunami that was coming towards them, and that everybody was adopting mobile, and mobile was going to be the place where budgets were going to be shifted. But at the time, everybody was talking about, we need to shrink our website so you can see it on a mobile phone. We need to have newsletters that are mobile optimized, but it wasn't really thinking about how behaviorally people were going to change drastically because now they had a phone that they could take with them everywhere, that it was going to become so much more than just a smaller form of display, that it was going to shape how people did things. And some of the obvious ones were things like shopping and keeping track of a recipe, or, you know, keeping track of calories and things like that. Things that you could never even do with a laptop were starting to spread up. So he had the foresight to think there's so much more that can be done here. There's all these apps that need really customized ads. They have a ton of data. If there was a way to aggregate them so marketers didn't have to go to each one, there's a huge opportunity here. And God love him, he had that whole idea, but he also came to me and said, you know, but I don't know how to make a PowerPoint and explain this. Can you help me? Right? Can we start doing that? So with the support of the investors there, because they thought, honestly, this might be able to be folded into Amplifinity, he came to me and we started talking through what the pitch would be, how we would describe it, you know, what the product would be. And from there, we started pitching it. You just have to try it. So we started going to investors, you go to publishers, you go to advertisers, and you get ready for them to slam the door in your face or kick you out. You're sort of bracing for that because you've just made a really ugly PowerPoint deck. Then they should slam the door in your face. But we kept getting really great feedback, really positive feedback. And after about 6 months of that, we said, all right, let's jump in.
So in terms of the earliest iteration of the business, was your original vision drastically different than what the business would become over time? And what was your perceived competitive advantage going into it?
It wasn't, the business we have today is not a pivot from what we originally rolled out, because it still uses a lot of the same fundamentals, but it is a pretty drastic evolution of it. So we've always primarily focused on apps. We've always focused on the ability to serve very customized ad experiences in, like, basically placement level customization of ads that can be put anywhere by the publisher in their mobile app and have it feel as if the publisher had designed and built it in themselves. And being able to serve those ads from one centralized platform, serve and track them across all that different inventory that you created. And that was always what we decided to do. Where that went, though, is we figured out that CPGs had this really unique need to tap into some of these app environments and the data that these apps were creating. And so over time, we just really honed our products in to meet the needs of that customer set.
So how long did it take the two of you to put together the plan and then have the courage or whatever you want to call it to finally move ahead and say, we're going to launch this business? How long did it take you from, ideation to launch?
So 6 months we were working nights and weekends before we
Okay.
decided to do it full time. And then it was probably 2 years before we really had like production ready technology. So before that, we had just sort of a beta that we were shopping around. We were talking to clients. We were trying to get some funding, which we ended up getting some loans and grants and a little bit of funding. But for 2 years, it's just, you're really sort of playing with the idea and throwing stuff against the wall. Starting in 2014, I think that's when we got our first big contract from Bank of America. That's when things really started taking off. And from there, it's just been growing and growing.
So that was your trigger to go all in, was that first big deal that kind of affirmed your belief that it was a real something.
Well, we were either stupid or just really optimistic, but we were all in when we quit our jobs in 2012. But then we were just really poor trying to figure it out for a couple of years. Now, when we got that big contract, that's when some investors and some colleagues or people that we could hire, some hires, became all in. That's when we could win over the hearts and minds of the people around us and start bringing them on board.
Now, if I remember correctly from something I had seen during my research, I think your first deal was like for $5,000, and it was about how far you could make that money go. I mean, talk about that first deal.
Yeah, I think we bought champagne after that first deal. We were so excited. It was $5,000 from a local advertising group that was working with, it was Biore. It was a skincare brand. And this was just a total test. I think they were just interested in mobile and in-app mobile and those types of things. But it was just enough that we could run a real campaign. And we gave most of that money to publisher partners that would let us serve ads in their apps because we needed that side of the equation too. It was but it was so fun. I mean, it was so much work. It's way more work than contracts that are 20 times that we do now, but it was the first one. So we were really learning on our feet.
So after it started to feel like a real business, what were those first months and years like? What did you learn? And especially, what were some of the things that surprised you? Some of the areas where you failed or didn't prepare as well as you should have? And were there moments where you're like, oh my gosh, what are we doing here? And where you maybe even contemplated walking away from the business? Did it ever get that bad?
Yeah. So I don't know how to answer the first part of your question. Like, what have we learned? We've learned so much in the last 5 years. I think one thing that's really interesting to me is how you can still be in the same company and have so many different roles, even if your title doesn't change drastically. Being the CMO or now CRO of a company that has 5 people doesn't really, it doesn't mean the same thing as being that same position, but now having about 50 people under you that you're working with. And Mike too. Mike's been CEO the whole time, but his job has changed drastically over the last few years. There are things that I miss about having a really small team, but there's things that are way more fun now. We're doing big things where our team is coming up with new ideas. We are testing new things. They come up with data and basically hacks, like ways to do better that we would have never come up with on our own. So that has made it a lot more fun. So it's just an evolution. It's a trade-off that you're always dealing with. And yes, we did almost lose the business maybe, I don't know, 5 years ago now, just because we were running out of money. We had investment, but we were coming to the end of that leash, and we weren't able to predict revenue as well as we are now. And so you start thinking through hard decisions. I remember Mike and I just didn't get paid for a few months. Like you just sort of take this step back and you do whatever you can. We luckily didn't have to lay anybody off, but we were having those conversations with investors of, what happens next. It's hard. If it happened again today, it would still be hard. It's heartbreaking. You have this team that you're supporting. Our team has families. It was not an easy time, but Mike and I never talked about us walking away. We were going to sort of be here till the bitter end because we really believe in the business. And it's been really fun to see how we've been able to turn it around and just how exciting everything is now.
Yeah. What were some of the other pains associated with expansion beyond just, more people to look after and more projects to look after and more space and kind of the natural stuff that's associated with growth? What are some of the other challenges? And I know capitalization is one of those. You had some challenges early on with investment where you thought you had it and then you didn't. But talk in terms of some of the other kind of growing pains that you all experience that we might not think about.
Yeah, there's a balance between being ahead of the market and being in a place where you're commercially viable, I guess. So there's times where we feel really confident that we figured out something that was, ahead of where the market is today. And you sort of expect to walk in and talk to CPGs or retailers and have them be like, wow, we need to jump all over that, right? Because we've talked to analysts, we've talked to consultants, we've interviewed people, and it feels like we have just really hit the nail on the head. We're super excited. And then you realize that there's just all these things that are happening in your customers' businesses that are so complicated and so complex that it doesn't matter if you could, turn water into wine and you walked it. They just don't have the capacity to sort of fit it in seamlessly. And there's been a few times, in fact, I was reminiscing with somebody about that recently, a few times where you just walk away and try to understand, right? Because it feels like you walked in with something that they couldn't refuse, right? An offer that how could you possibly, step away from. So there's been a few of those, and just trying to understand that you're only one side of the equation. You always have to be thinking about the other side. The other thing is the dynamics of growth. It's as you have a lot of people working for you, making sure that you can still have that same culture and that same that feeling between that relationship, I guess, between us and all of the people that are on the team. That's a struggle, especially with COVID. That's become more of a struggle, but it's something that we are conscious of and that we work towards.
Yeah. My very next question was about COVID. My guess is it's been really good for your business, but I'd love to kind of hear about what the last months and even last year has been like, and the way that our change in shopping and consumption has impacted your business and how you've been able to capitalize on it.
Yeah, it hasn't been bad for our bottom line. I guess when you say it's been good for our business, the only negative effect it's had on our business is our inability to work closely with our team. So everybody's sort of scattered, and you don't have,
of course,
we have a really strong culture that I'm not going to say, I think just like every office, right? It took a hit. We'd have to think really quickly about how we communicate, how we keep everybody working together, how we still get that same innovation coming from a team whose daily habits have just been turned on their head. In terms of our bottom line, it's been sort of helpful for sure. I hesitate to say that, Matt. It makes me feel bad just given the state of the world. But
of course,
but we understand. We saw before they actually purchased some of the trends that were happening with how people were buying groceries. So we monitor on a daily basis the things that people are typing and putting on their list and the types of products that they're buying. And quickly, when we're looking back over, last February and into March and into April, you just started to see these major shifts in data that people were doing things differently. One, volumes were just going up across the board. People were buying more groceries. They were buying them differently. They were changing when they went to the store, how they went to the store, how many products they were buying. We could see shifts between different types of brands. One of the famous things that we saw that we talk a lot about, we saw this crazy dive on granola bars that my team couldn't understand at first when March was rolling around last year. What we figured out later was, even though it's this shelf stable food that we thought people would want to stock up on, schools were closing across the country and moms were stopping. They weren't buying granola bars anymore to support that. And so we could see all of this. And we've been able to go to our clients and CPGs, share that and show them how we can optimize spend around some of these new trends that very few people are able to understand. And so that has helped us tremendously. And we've been able to grow our team, grow revenue, We've been able to innovate on some new products. Yeah, so it's been good.
Is there a capability that AdAdapted has that people haven't really considered? I mean, as a predictive analytics tool, are there use cases that people may not know you have, or would be surprised that you have?
I don't think people tap into our data enough. I think, and we have to get better at explaining the different uses of that. So what we're doing on the back end is, if you're a CPG company, and let's say you're selling a new type of milk, dairy-free milk, right? What we're doing, our goal is to get your ads in front of shoppers, and get it in front of shoppers that will see that ad and add it to their list. And what we're measured on is our ability to do that. So a CPG client is looking at us and saying, okay, we gave you this much spend, you serve this many ads. How many people actually made the decision to purchase that product? And then we also have some sales attribution after that to prove that getting on the list actually does prove sales, which we have a lot of data against to prove that too. But that's basically the goal. Now, to do that, we have to know who are the people that are most likely to click on this ad, right? We can serve it to everybody we know, everybody that we see has a shopping list, but let's serve it to the people that are likely to click on that ad because of the things that we've seen them put on their list in the past. And when we first started AdAdapted, that was pretty, basic. We didn't have a lot of capabilities there. Now our capabilities are getting more and more advanced. And so when you think about that data set, when you think about us being able to predict what somebody's going to buy, or being able to see the patterns around what they've been adding to their list and how that's affected by advertising, it's pretty compelling. It's pretty fun. And I think a lot of kind of what we were talking about before, retailers and CPGs, they see there's value there, but they're trying to understand how they can absorb it or integrate it into some of the systems that they have today.
In terms of what's new or what's next at AdAdapted, and I know some of the things you're working on, you wouldn't want to talk about, but what are some of the things that are new, some of the things that are coming in your business that you'd be excited to share about?
We have a couple of new partners that I can't announce right now, but we're getting really close with. We're negotiating contracts, that kind of thing, that I'm really excited about announcing in the next probably sometime in Q2. That's going to be really fun. We have some capabilities. We've been working with a couple e-com partners and doing some stuff on that side that has been really interesting. We have some really great data that's going to come out on that. We just did this really large scale research project where we went out to about 200 prominent brand marketers and shopper marketers to better understand how they look at the funnel outside of just AdAdapted, but understanding, sort of how they look at marketing and shopper marketing and getting closer to point of sale. And the data is just super fun to read through and just see all these insights. So those are all things that in the next couple of months we'll be releasing that I'm really proud of and excited about.
Yeah. If you weren't all in, this is a crazy thing to say because it's like asking, if you didn't have one of your kids, but if you weren't all in with AdAdapted, what would you be working on? Are there other industries that you're interested in? What areas would you be looking at in terms of your next startup?
I'm really intrigued about, what's going on with the CPG space right now. I've seen some really good examples of a really good product that's out there that's owned by like a mom and pop group that doesn't really have the marketing capabilities or doesn't have the basically the expertise to package that up, get it to consumers in this new distribution world, right? And with all the changing rules, and then eventually sell to the large CPGs that are looking for innovation outside of their own four walls. Yeah. And there are a couple of products that, my team and I have come across over the last year or so, where we just sort of say, if we had the money and weren't full-time on AdAdapted, weren't up to our eyeballs in AdAdapted, like this is just this should be a home run for somebody. So I think that's what I would be doing, although if I didn't have AdAdapted, I probably wouldn't know about them.
Yeah. So I want to skip ahead a couple of things. We're kind of in the final stretch here. I'll be really respectful of your time, but in terms of trends, I mean, we're seeing such acceleration right now in terms of changes in the way we shop and consume and even live.
Sure.
And it seems like AdAdapted is right in the sweet spot of that acceleration. So I'm wondering, what are you learning from your engagements with brands, with retailers, with shoppers, that's providing you some clue as to what's ahead in the macro sense, what's ahead?
Yeah. You know, it's a really hard question to summarize, but one of the things that we've been really intrigued. So we spent probably 6 months just really trying to 6 months trying to understand what people were thinking about in terms of their next move. So asking CPGs, asking retailers, asking partners, given everything that we see happening with COVID and technology, like what's 6 months out, you know, or 1 year out. Then the conversation shifted. We've talked to a couple of people recently that have been thinking about what's 3 years out. And what they've been looking at is data out of Europe, out of Asia, about what retailers are doing there, and the intersection between e-com and delivery and advertising and how people are buying. And it wasn't until diving into some of these stories and these anecdotes that are coming out of these different markets that I realized, you know, it's pretty clear that we're going in the same direction, and it's being accelerated by some of the changes we see today. When you start to picture that, right, and when you start to see like, how do people buy groceries in different places in Asia? How do they use apps? What kind of content are they in when they're buying the groceries? Are they going to separate apps? Are they going to separate accounts? Is it all integrated? And you start seeing these huge shifts that we just don't have figured out over here right now, that it's still very, you know, separated in different ways. But it's been really excited to sort of see that line start to connect. You can start to see the connection between what's happened in the last year and where we are today and where they are right now. And you can start to see the path between them. So that's exciting.
Yeah, it's extremely, what an exciting time to be a student and a participant in retail. I never would have imagined when my career, you know, started 30 years ago that it would look anything like this. We couldn't have. So in wrapping up, I just have a few questions that I want to give people an opportunity maybe to know you a little bit better as a human, the world as you see it.
Yep.
So beyond your professional and entrepreneurial careers, I'd love to know a little bit more about, you know, who are you and how do you want to be known and remembered?
That's
deep
a great
water
question.
Deep water.
Well, you know, I'm really proud of the career that I've built. I'm really proud of the company I've built. I'm starting to think about how I can give back, especially to women in tech. It's a question that I, to be totally honest, Matt, I don't know how to answer, because people have asked me before, you know, have you felt sexism in the workplace? Have you felt that hold you back? And in some ways I can say not really, you know, like, because Mike and I have worked so closely together and we've seemingly faced the same challenges. And then there's other times where it seems pretty clear to me that I've seen women around me being held back when I've seen men get opportunities that feel like they were handed over to them. So understanding that better, and then being a good mentor and advisor to the women around me is important to me. I've also recently become a mother.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I have a 20-month-old, and then just trying to understand, you know, how you can give 100% to your startup and still give 100% to your family, and how those two things can kind of happen at the same time. I kind of take it just like I do any other challenge in growing a business. You just have to like be conscious of it. You have to be diligent about it, and you have to think about it a lot. So that's another aspect to me right now.
Yeah. My next question was about prioritization and what matters and what doesn't. And I think you've given us some clues already, but talk in terms of how you create priorities in your life with more and more responsibility being added.
I write lists all the time. Do you write lists? Are you a list person?
I have to be, or else I don't get anything done.
Yeah. I just have lists upon lists upon lists, and I spend a good amount of time reorganizing those lists and moving them around as different curveballs get thrown in. And that has been when I had, when I was single and we had AdAdapted, all the way until, you have a family and a kid. And now that you have a board that's putting more pressure on you and more employees, it's just, you have to be able to think on a level of, what am I trying to do over the next 6 months to get there? What do I have to do in the next 30 days? What do I have to do this week? What has to be done today? And just be really diligent about it. If my Trello board went away, I would be a mess. I couldn't do any of it. And the things on that board have changed a little bit, but it's still the same process. It's still just a prioritization game.
I watched a presentation, a real short presentation that you made a couple of years ago. I saw it on YouTube, and it's really, really good, talking about the advice that you would give. And it talks about, managing your time, talking to anyone and everyone, and building resilience. And I just wonder if you might touch on those three things and any other advice you would give to someone who, particularly at the beginning of their career, but I guess resilience especially speaks to longevity and perseverance and so forth. But speak to the advice that you would give to someone.
Yeah, going back to that idea of imposter syndrome, the thing that held me back the most when I was in my 20s was this concept, and this concept that everybody in the room knew more than I did, and that I was somehow not as smart and not as equipped as they were. It sounds so like it's not breakthrough career guidance, but I see it all the time with other young professionals. This idea, this fear of putting themselves out there, this fear of answering questions, this fear of sort of participating, because they just assume that the guy next to them, because he's a little bit more confident or dressed a different way or have a couple more years of experience, knows a lot more than they do. And it took a decade, right, to sort of start figuring out, oh, no, they're just people. Even if they're somebody that I'm selling to, or somebody in a position of power, or somebody that's making really complicated decisions, I need to respect their expertise on some things, but I also understand that they are just another human. And I am not somehow, I don't have a deficit that they don't have. And I think that if more kids, or people early in their career could just sort of give themselves that credit, not be afraid to make mistakes, understand that it's not like they're up against somebody that's way more powerful than they are, it would just help relieve a lot of anxiety and also let them really take advantage of the opportunities in front of them. Again, it doesn't seem like crazy advice. Breakthrough advice or anything really big, but it's just something that I think could help a lot of people in their everyday if they just took time to sort of have a little bit more faith in themselves.
Yeah. What's something that you've yet to accomplish in any aspect of your life that motivates you to play the game hard?
What's something I've yet to accomplish? I guess, maybe I've never been the top of my field in anything that I've done, right? We've never, I don't know. I guess this is totally separate. It's not business. The first thing that when you said that, actually, I'll just go with my gut answer was I secretly want to run a marathon. I've done a half marathon a couple of times, and in the back of my head, I keep saying that that's something that I want to do, and I never have done it. So when you said that, that's where I was first going. Business wise, I don't know. Every year brings a new hill that we have to climb. Every year there's new challenges, and I often feel very successful and super proud as we hit each one of those milestones, and then the clock starts back at zero and you have to do it all over again. But I don't necessarily want to have one ultimate goal, because I think that's just too heavy, Matt. I think I need to break it up into smaller chunks.
Yeah, well, and the next question is not going to be easier to answer, because you pointed to a lot. No, you pointed to a lot of things in your life and in your career. But if you had to name one thing that has, more than anything else, best prepared you or sustained you for this journey, any aspect of that journey, by the way, what would you say it would be? The thing that's been the most important, the most impactful, that's gotten you to where you are today as a professional, as a mother, as anything?
I think it was the way that I was raised. I had, there's a lot of challenges in my childhood. I don't think I mentioned this at the beginning, but my father was actually paralyzed in a pretty tragic pool accident when I was 2. which, over the course of years led to a divorce, led to my mom being a nurse and then being a single mom, suddenly trying to raise me, and then moving up to a town that was teeny tiny, and just sort of watching her navigate all of that and still providing a pretty incredible childhood. My husband always jokes that it sounds like I grew up in happy, shiny sunshine camp, because I always talk about all the things that we did. And we were hiking mountains and canoeing and just doing a bunch of stuff in skiing every winter. It's just beautiful. But when you look at what my mom went through to get there, it had to be hell. It had to be super hard. And I never really saw that. And now as I'm an adult and you think about, small obstacles in business or curveballs at work, it's nothing compared to some of the stuff that she overcame. And I think about that a lot, both in my personal and professional life. So I think it's sad, but it is something that has driven me. Both what happened to my dad, who was also brave, super brave, as he had to navigate being paralyzed until he passed away when I was 18, and the way that my mom had to respond to it.
Yeah. So Molly, I'll give you the last word, but my last question, if you can include this in your answer, is has it been fun? From childhood through the university experience and your bartending and first job and growth and next job, and then leaving to start a company, and the ups and downs and the good years and the bad years. On the whole, has it been fun?
It's been super fun. It's been super fun. You know what, though? I wish, and I wonder, I'll ask you the same question. I kind of wish that I could go back and tell my 18-year-old self and 25-year-old self and 30-year-old self even to enjoy it more. Because when you actually see it play out, you're like, hell yeah, it was fun. We were having a lot of fun, right? And we're still having fun. But I think sometimes at those key milestones, you feel stressed out and you don't know what the future is going to bring, and you let that cause sleepless nights. But yes, I've had a lot of fun along the way, and I'm trying to teach myself to lighten up a little bit so I can enjoy it more as it's happening.
One thing that I really envy about this next generation, these teenagers, is their rejection of convention. And, when I was, growing up, there were certainly nothing like my parents' face and their parents' face, but there was an expectation that you're going to do this and you're going to do this and you're going to do this. And now it's like, nah, maybe I won't go to college. Maybe I'll job hop. Maybe I'll just experience a lot of things. Maybe I won't own a home and I'll just be location independent, and just having the courage to say, I don't care what you think normal is. This is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to see what happens. So, well, Molly, this has been so much fun getting to know you and getting to know AdAdapted a little bit better, and been fun getting to know your team as well. Thank you so much for making the time for this conversation. So Molly McFarland, co-founder and chief revenue officer at AdAdapted. It's been great. Have a good day. So long, everyone. We'll see you again soon.